good.
Yeah.
So it's one of the ones I think it takes away from the, should be a good meeting today.
We got to start. Good afternoon, Council. Welcome to the public session of our council meeting. Just before we start, I'd like to bring to Council's attention, and I know most of them have recognized it, that we're experimenting with a change in the order on the agenda. So we've moved items like staff reports, which often contain really important material, up in the agenda, and we've moved delegations back in the agenda. Delegations are important, but we want to give them a specific time to present. So we're going to pilot these changes, see how they work. We have not made any changes to our bylaw at this time, our procedures bylaw. We'll wait a couple of months, we'll get input from all of you and see how things are working. And at that time, if we decide that we do want to have the changes continue, then we'll make changes to our procedure bylaw. The delegation, we only have one today, is designated for 4 o'clock. So what will happen is if we finish the agenda before 4 o'clock, we'll take a short recess until that time. If we're in the middle of business at 4 o'clock, we'll take a pause. We'll have our delegation present from 4 to 4:15, and then we'll continue our business. Okay? Adoption of the agenda. Is there any changes to the agenda?
Your Worship, there are a couple of letters that have come in late for the public hearing this evening that have been distributed.
Thank you. I believe they'll be distributed just before the evening session. I'll just confirm that with staff.
Is that correct?
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Any other changes from staff?
No.
Okay, thank you. Disclosure of interest? Any disclosure of interest? Hearing none. Confirmation of minutes, the regular council meeting minutes of October the 22nd, 2018. We have a motion.
Moved by Councillor Eliason, seconded by Councillor Flynn, that the regular council meeting minutes of October 22nd, 2018 be adopted as circulated.
Is there any business arising from the minutes? Seeing none, all in favor? Thank you. Special council meeting minutes of November the 5th, 2018. We have a motion.
Moved by Councillor Eliason, seconded by Councillor Lavery, that the special council meeting minutes of November 5th, 2018 be adopted as circulated.
Is there any business arising from those minutes? Seeing none, all in favor? Thank you. Item 6, committee reports. First committee report is the Development Planning Services Committee meeting minutes of November the 5th, 2018. We have a motion.
Moved by Councillor Wallace Richmond, seconded by Councillor Flynn, that the Development and Planning Services Committee meeting minutes of November 5th, 2018 be received as information.
Thank you. Any business arising from those minutes? Seeing none, all in favor? Thank you. Community Heritage Commission meeting minutes of October the 19th, 2018. We have a motion.
Moved by Councillor Wallace Richmond, seconded by Councillor Eliason, that the Community Heritage Commission meeting minutes of October 19, 2018 be received as information.
Okay, I see Councillor Flynn, you have a question?
Oh, I'm Councillor Flynn.
I understand, yes. Councillor Wallace Richmond. Okay, I'll figure that out. Councillor Wallace Richmond.
Thanks, Your Worship. I'm just pulling up the minutes on my device here, but you'll see in the minutes we addressed with the resignation of a commissioner. Yes. Which may be in council correspondence. I can't.
It is a piece of business that we're looking at later, yes.
Okay, and then item 1 in Heritage. So while I'm no longer the Heritage, on the Heritage Commission with the absence of Councillor Cannon, I just thought I'd raise this, that there was a resignation, and also there will be an appointment of a new commissioner to address coming in council correspondence.
Thank you very much. Any other questions regarding the minutes? Seeing none, all those in favor? Thank you. Downtown Parking Commission meeting minutes of October the 23rd, 2018. We have a motion.
Moved by Councillor Eliason, seconded by Councillor Lavery, that the Downtown Parking Commission meeting minutes of October 23rd, 2018 be received as information.
Do you have any questions regarding those minutes? Seeing none, all in favor? Thank you. Moving to item number 7, the Columbia Shuswap Regional District update. Board in brief. This is for council's information. Is there any report from our regional district representatives or any questions from council? Okay, seeing none, we'll move forward to item number 8. Director of Development Services Community Heritage Commission appointment. We have a motion.
Your worship, we would be looking for a motion from council on this item.
Thank you. Councillor Wallace-Richmond, second Councillor Lavery. Any discussion around the motion? Thank you. All those in favor? Opposed? Thank you. Item 8.2, Director of Engineering and Public Works, Lakeshore Road Geotechnical Report. I'd ask the Director of Engineering if you would like to comment on that report.
Your worship, this is just on for information, and it had been discussed at the development planning meeting, so really it's just for moving it forward.
Thank you very much. I will open it up to councillors if councillors have any questions around that report. Seeing none, thank you very much for that report. Moving ahead to 8.3, Chief Elections Officer 2018 General Local Election Results for information. We have a motion.
We don't require a motion for that one. Your
Sorry,
worship.
that's just for our information. Is there any questions from council around that report? Okay, thank you very much. I'd like to thank the Chief Elections Officer for an excellent job and the staff as well. Very well run. We'll move forward. Chief Financial Officer, Mailing System Lease Agreement. We have a motion.
Moved by Councillor Eliason, seconded by Councillor Lavery, that the mayor and corporate officer be authorized to execute the lease agreement with Complete Mailing Solutions for a 5-year period for the lease of a 480 mailing system.
Thank you. Chief Financial Officer?
Thank you, Your Worship. The city's current mailing system will no longer be supported by Canada Post effective January 15, 2019. As a result, we must replace the current postage machine with a mailing system that's compatible. We looked at 3 distributors that provided acceptable machines, one of which was not viable due to the fact that we would have to ship it to be serviced, or if it needed repair, to Burnaby. The other options were through Pitney Bowes, who is the current provider of our mailing system now. The lease cost through them has been quoted at $249.83 a month. Consumable costs include ink cartridges at $305 each about. The analysis of the estimated cost over 5 years indicated a present value of $15,242.95. The other offer was through Complete Mailing Solutions. They're a local dealer in Kelowna, and they offer a NeoPost machine. The lease cost through them was quoted at $223.72 a month. Ink cartridges are $220 each. The analysis of the present value of this option yielded $14,846.25. Both machines, the lease cost includes delivery, installation, meter rental, maintenance, and Canada Post rate updates. We have not ever worked with CMS before or with the NeoPost machine. However, they do provide that machine to a number of organizations in the local area. We contacted them to provide a reference. Overall, they spoke to a high-quality machine with excellent customer service. So based on this, it is my recommendation that we go with the NeoPost machine, as it's both a lower cost and it comes with an excellent recommendation. If we take advantage at this point, we will receive the first 3 months free, so there'll actually be a really minimal budget impact in 2018 other than consumable costs.
Great, thank you for your very thorough report. Any questions from council? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you. On to section number 9, which is the introduction of bylaws. The first one is the City of Salmon Arm zoning amendment bylaw number 4291. Nakazawa Lawson Engineering and Development Services, 2371 Auto Road, Southeast, R1 to R8 and R4. This is first and second reading. We have a motion.
Moved by Councilor Wallace Richmond, seconded by Councilor Eliason, that the bylaw entitled City of Salmon Arm zoning amendment bylaw number 4291 be read a first and second time.
Thank you. I'll ask the Director of Development Services to outline the plan for us.
Your Worship, the property is located at 2371 Auto Road. It's 2.5 acres in size. It's presently a remainder of a subdivision underway, and the aerial photo here was taken in 2016. A lot of these vacant lots shown in the air photo have been built on now, and what is proposed is a split zone. I'll go back to the plan here. Maybe that's not a good one. Okay, this is Auto Road here, and these lots that front Auto Road are proposed to be rezoned to R4 and have relatively small lot sizes, 320 square meters each, which is quite below the minimum lot size for R1 or R8. And the rest of the property is proposed to be rezoned to R8, where it says Phase 3 and Phase 5. And Phase 5, these lots here would front onto 5A Avenue, and the rears of these lots would front onto a 10-meter wide lane, as would the R4 zoned lots. And the official community plan for this land is designated medium density residential, which is the bright yellow on the screen. And that designation supports the R8 and R4 zoning. And what's being proposed here is first and second reading of the bylaw.
Thank you very much. We had fairly extensive discussion at the planning development meeting, but I would open up to questions from council. Councillor Flynn.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you. So the R4 lots that will border on Auto, clearly there will not be driveway access to Auto, I'm assuming. It'll have to come through the lane.
Director of Development Services.
Through you, Your Worship, that's correct. There's a covenant that will be registered on this remainder here that will say no access to Auto Road. There will, however, be an emergency access, which is right here. And presently, this is a pedestrian trail connecting to the end of this cul-de-sac here. You might be able to see it better on the air photo. This will turn into an emergency access for the subdivision. But to answer your question, no access onto Auto Road.
So that, just further clarification, that emergency access, it will remain a walkway with a gate, and that gate will be opened in case of an emergency, is that correct?
Yes.
So we won't lose the pedestrian access, because I know that's a significant high traffic pedestrian access. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions? Hearing none. All those in favor? Thank you. Item 9.2, City of Salmon Arm zoning amendment bylaw number 4292, Thiessen, KNL, 3710 16th Avenue Northeast, R1 to R8, first and second reading. We have a motion.
Moved by Councilor Flynn, seconded by Councilor Eliason, that the bylaw entitled City of Salmon Arm zoning amendment bylaw number 4292 be read a first and second time, and that final reading be withheld subject to approval by the Ministry of Transportation.
Thank you. Director of Development Services.
Your Worship, this property is located in the northeast quadrant of the city. It's a relatively large parcel, subdivided a long time ago. I don't have the plan in front of me, but probably in the 1970s by the looks of the lot. And the proposal is to rezone the property to R8 residential suite zone to allow a basement suite to be constructed under BC Building Code and no greater than 90 square meters in area. And there was a bit of discussion at the planning committee about parking, and the driveway itself is actually large enough for 4 vehicles. Part of the renovation plans is to build a new garage onto the house. This plan here shows the garage. This is not the suite. The suite is actually in the basement, as shown on this drawing here. The OCP community plan designation for this area is low density residential, and there's one, sorry, again, this is not the bright yellow color, but this is the yellow color, which represents low density residential. And that supports the proposed zoning. And the zoning map shows that there's one other lot in this subdivision that has R8 zoning too.
Thank you very much. Do councillors have any questions regarding this rezoning application? Okay, seeing none, it seems to me this is exactly what we're encouraging, so I would support it. All those in favor? Thank you, passed unanimously. Item 9.3, City of Salmon Arm, Ross Street Underpass Loan Authorization Bylaw number 4500, final reading, and City of Salmon Arm, Ross Street Underpass Temporary Borrowing Bylaw number 4290, first, second, and third reading. I would need a mover to move the motion. Councillor Eliason, seconder. Councillor Flynn. Could I have staff read the motion, please?
Moved by Councillor Eliason, seconded by Councillor Flynn, that the declaration of official assent voting results for the City of Salmon Arm Ross Street Underpass Loan Authorization Bylaw number 4500 be received, and that the bylaw entitled Ross Street Underpass Loan Authorization Bylaw number 4500 be read a final time, and that Council approve the borrowing from the Municipal Finance Authority of BC as part of the 2019 fall borrowing session, $5.3 million as authorized through the Ross Street Underpass Loan Authorization Bylaw number 4500, and that the Columbia Shuswap Regional District be requested to consent to the city's borrowing over a 30-year term and include the borrowing in a security issuing bylaw, and that the bylaw entitled Ross Street Underpass Temporary Borrowing Bylaw number 4290 be read a first, second, and third time.
Great, thank you. And councillors who were here previously will remember we passed bylaw number 4500 for second and third reading in anticipation of the vote on Ross Street Underpass. We're now including that with bylaw number 4290. I'd ask the Director of Corporate Services, would you like to comment on this?
Your Worship, I would actually like to defer to the Chief Financial Officer regarding bylaw 4290, as it does relate to the temporary borrowing.
Okay, thank you.
Your Worship, did you have a specific question, or you just want me to comment on it?
I'd just like you to comment on it.
Sure. So the majority of the elector responses were in favor of the city borrowing $5.3 million for the Ross Street Underpass construction and related works. Council may now adopt the loan authorization bylaw 4500. Further, Council may pass a security issuing resolution pursuant to Section 182. This allows the city to access the long-term bond market in the fall of 2019. So MFA does issuance of long-term debt twice a year, in the spring and in the fall. There is required a time frame for this to be approved by the ministry and then forwarded to them for their own approvals. Because of that, we can make use of temporary borrowing to supplement, but the temporary borrowing can only be up to the maximum that we're approved for long-term borrowing.
I understand. Okay, thank you. Councillor Lassen.
Thanks, Your Worship. And just to the Section 182, we expect to go for the long-term bond issue in the fall, is that, or would we wait until the future?
Chief Financial Officer.
Sorry, I didn't hear just your last.
So So we're passing a temporary borrowing of up to $5.3 million, and we're okay with that. When do we actually go for the bond? Is that when we finally have completed the project and we know exactly what we would like to borrow, if it's 5.1 or 4.9, or do we go out into the market now and secure that longer term bond?
I believe you temporary issue until you finalize.
Okay.
But because we are borrowing less than the total cost of what this project is going to be, we're going to borrow the full amount.
Okay.
So when that happens, that's the maximum. So we're just going to do it in the fall.
Okay. And MFA gets us the best deal, and I'd like us to lock into a bond as soon as possible, not knowing what's happening with bond markets long, medium, short term. So if we could do it today, that would be great, but maybe they'll come down. We'll see.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Eliason. Councillor Flynn.
Thank you, Worship. And similar question, because I'm not completely understanding the two and that's. The bottom two, the first and that, or actually the second, but first in my question is, we are getting authorization to borrow 5.3 million through long-term borrowing, but we will not lock in that long-term borrowing until at the earliest the fall, because we're not in time for the spring market. Is that correct?
Chief Financial Officer.
Yes, so we require the ministry's approval. Once this bylaw is adopted, we have to wait the 1 month quashing period, then it gets sent off to the ministry for approval. Once that is received, then we can temporary borrow. Because of the time frame that it takes the ministry to approve the request, there isn't sufficient time for this to be forwarded to the CSRD to adopt the security issuing bylaw. They are required to, I believe, in order to access the spring market, they would need it by January, February, and I can't confirm we received the approval back from the ministry in time to do that. So by doing a temporary borrowing bylaw, we are able to ensure that we have financing in place to begin construction prior to accessing long-term. So that's why we're doing the temporary borrowing at this point as well.
So based on what you just said, correct me if I'm not interpreting it properly, we may be in a position in the spring, but we're not expecting to be in a position to lock in rates in the spring if everything goes perfect.
Correct.
But you're anticipating possibly the fall as being the earliest we could lock in long-term.
Yes, my timeline projects that in order to access the market in the fall, we would need to be advising the CSRD by June.
Okay. So I tend to agree with Councillor Eliason, and I know that we're being abundantly cautious in not trying for the spring, but with my business and my experience, I'm thinking the sooner we can get in, it might be the better. But I don't think it's going to be a material difference between spring and fall in the borrowing rate, especially on a 30-year bond. So now when we lock in that 30-year bond, because we've been so good at fiscally managing projects in the past, we are not tied to the 30-year. We can pay it down faster. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And then my last question, and I know staff has already told me we don't have a chance, but knowing how positive the vote was from the community, which I think all of us were optimistically hopeful for a positive result, the extremely positive result at 63%, is there any ability to, if something gets announced for infrastructure, for us to apply so that we can borrow less once we've done this? I mean, we're proceeding as though we can't get any more, but if there was something that came up, this short-term borrowing seems to be able to allow us to possibly apply for that. Is that correct?
I'll direct that to the Chief Administrative Officer.
Your Worship, that's my understanding as well. If we don't require the full 5.3 million, we don't need to borrow that. If we do, we cannot use it for any other purpose.
Yeah, no, okay. Thank you. Thank you for answering all those questions.
Thank you, Councillor Flynn. Councillor Wallace-Richmond.
Thanks, Your Worship. I think most of my questions are answered. We're voting for third reading today. Does it have to go to public hearing before fourth reading?
Chief Financial Officer or Chief Administrative Officer?
There is no public hearing,
Okay,
Your Worship.
thank you.
Okay, thank you. Is there any other questions around these bylaws? Okay, thank you for the input by councillors, because I think it clarified it for everyone. And thank you very much to staff. I think this is a really momentous motion, and it shows that people of Salmon Arm voted to build this Ross Street underpass, and we are going to build it. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. Thank you. 9.4, City of Salmon Arm Fee-for-Service Amendment Bylaw, number 4294, Water and Sewer Rates for 2019 and 2020, first, second, and third reading. Director of Engineering and Public Works, is that who would speak to this, or would it be the Chief Financial Officer? Okay. Chief Financial Officer, you're on a roll over there.
I do have a motion to read, Your
Sorry,
Worship.
yes, please.
Moved by Councillor Flynn, seconded by Councillor Wallace Richmond, that the bylaw entitled Fee for Service Amendment Bylaw number 4294 be read a first, second, and third time.
Thank you.
Your Worship, the annual water and sewer user fees have historically been billed in December for the upcoming year. Typically, the water and sewer user fees are assessed and brought forward to council with the annual budget presentation in November. However, with the 2019 presentation not scheduled until January, we need to address this at this point in order to proceed with our annual billing as scheduled. It's recommended that the 2019 budget include a 1.5% increase and the 2020 budget include a 2% increase in both water and sewer to address increasing costs relating to labor, equipment, materials, as well as to maintain reserves and adequate annual capital upgrades. The impact to a residential user in 2019 would be an increase of $7.73 and in 2020, $10.49. The utility funds are funding approximately $500,000 in infrastructure upgrades from water and sewer revenues, reducing the need to borrow funds for smaller scale projects. However, for larger projects, the use of long-term debt and the accumulation of reserves is prudent, and a combination of both is a good funding mechanism to ensure a healthy financial foundation. So in order to accomplish this, we must continue to transfer to reserves to ensure sufficient funding is in place. So included within the report are several significant future projects to note that support the proposed increases to the fees.
Thank you very much, and I know Council's aware these utilities balance themselves, water and sewer. Is there questions around this report by Council? Councillor Flynn.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you. The background, the last paragraph, it states, it is recommended that the 2019 budget include a 1.5% increase and the 2020 budget include a 2% increase, both less than last year based on your memo or similar. It should be noted, however, that the budgets will not reflect an increase to the water and sewage frontage tax. So maybe for the very full gallery, you could clarify, mostly for me, really. We're increasing the rates, and that's taking the net from $5.17 to $5.25 next year, so $8. What does it mean by there isn't an increase to water and sewer frontage taxes?
Chief Financial Officer.
It's my understanding that the water and sewer frontage taxes are to help with the costs of borrowing in related to infrastructure improvements. So because we haven't had to borrow, we don't have a justification to increase those rates.
Thank you. Councillor
Okay.
Flynn, do you have a follow-up? Or?
Okay, so that's, we're increasing the amount each homeowner would pay
Operating.
for operating, but not for any frontage taxes related to infrastructure.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Lassen.
Thanks. Councillor Flynn has asked my question, but normally I would be comfortable talking about all of this water and sewer discussion in our budget process, which would happen now or would have already happened, but because of the election year, this being pushed back and we need to get this out for December. So I will support these two increases.
Thank you. Councillor Wallace Richmond.
Thanks, Your Worship. Just to clarify that this is a one-year only request. This time next year, we'll do it all at the same time? Or?
Your Worship, we are requesting the rates be increased this year as well as in 2020 so that we don't need to bring this back.
I see.
It's 2 years.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that, Councillor Wallace Richmond. It's a very interesting report. A couple of things I found interesting were, so we have 125 kilometers of sanitary sewer line in Salmon Arm. Is that right?
That's correct.
How much water line do we have?
I don't have that figure at my fingertips, but I'll get it for you.
Okay,
It's a lot more.
that's what I thought. I'd be
Yeah.
interested to know. But 125 kilometers of sanitary sewer, that's a long distance. Any other questions or input from council? All those in favor? Passed unanimously. Thank you. Item 10. Item 10 is reconsideration of bylaws. Just before we get to the motions, I'm not going to ask the Director of Development Services to review these because we have gone through the public hearing. I don't think it's necessary unless council would like me to ask him to do that. But I would think that council would be very familiar with these zoning applications. So I'll ask for a motion for 10.1 City of Salmon Arm zoning bylaw number 4282, Salmon Arm Shopping Center Limited / Green Emerald Investment, 1511 10th Avenue Southwest, R1 to C3. Final reading.
Moved by Councillor Flynn, seconded by Councillor Lavery, that the bylaw entitled zoning amendment bylaw number 4282 be read a final time.
Is there any questions from council? All those in favor? Any opposed? Thank you. Carried unanimously. 10.2, City of Salmon Arm zoning amendment bylaw number 4283, Fennel, 110 2nd Street Southeast, R1 to R8. And I know council does not need to have this one read to them. Please, the motion.
Moved by Councillor Lyson, seconded by Councillor Wallace Richmond, that the bylaw entitled zoning amendment bylaw number 4283 be read a final time.
Any questions from council? All those in favor? Any opposed? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Item 11 is informational correspondence. And just before we talk about informational correspondence, I'd like to thank staff for some additional information that they've provided to us. And you can see the legend below. N meaning no action required, A meaning action requested, S meaning staff has responded, and R meaning response required. This is not to stifle discussion on informational correspondence, but just to guide us so that we don't have to ask those questions. For example, item number 3, Ms. Fisher email dated October 31st, dog poops bags. We know that staff has responded, so we don't have to ask them to respond. So that's the idea, that it'll make it run smoothly. Having said that, I would be open to any informational correspondence items council would like to discuss. It's very interesting, Councillor Flynn, because every time you press your button, my name comes up.
I know, I was wondering how you were dealing with that.
I'm well, Councillor Flynn.
Thank you. So item 4, which is the one that says A. I'm not sure what A is required, but I thought somebody should bring it up now that we have our new system. And I do want to thank staff for dealing with the S and replying. But has staff looked at this property, and in light of the fact there's an A there, does anybody have any idea what A we should do?
Thank you, Councillor Flynn. We'll refer that to Director of Engineering and Public Works.
So, Your Worship, we have investigated this. Unfortunately, the lane is at, or this location is at the bottom of a bit of a valley. So staff are looking into what we can do. There is storm sewer in the area, but that would mean extending some sort of catch basin there. There could also be a dry well installed. but that all comes at a cost. So I think what we're going to be doing is recommending that this get put on to specific referrals, and that'll give us a chance to develop some cost estimates for this.
That was exactly the A that I was going to recommend. Send it to specific referrals.
Thank you to staff, and that's great. If it goes to specific referrals and then we have a amount tagged to it, then council will make that decision at that time. Thank you.
Just a quick
Oh,
question.
press your button one more time, sorry.
Councillor
Councillor Flynn?
One more time. Thank you, Your Worship. And just to be clear, has the letter writer been informed that we've looked at it and that it's being referred, or do we need to send something back?
Your Worship, typically in these scenarios, they will get a letter once it's gone through the process, but because we won't be reviewing the budget until January, we'll be in touch with Mrs. Morkey.
Okay.
Letting her know.
Thank you very much. Any other items anyone wishes to discuss? Councillor Wallace-Richmond?
Your Worship, having been reappointed to the Shuswap Healthy Communities Coalition, I wanted to draw council's attention to the Healthy Communities newsletter, which is available monthly and speaks to significant projects happening in the region that council should be aware of, and opportunities that exist for Salmon Arm, both for council, for staff, and for community groups.
Thank you. Any other discussion? If not, I would like just to talk about the building department statistics. Item number 2, actually, which is the comparatives between years. And you can see that 2018 is almost identical to 2017, which was an outstanding year. Almost 60 million in building stats. And if we can just go back now to the breakdown for this year. The housing starts are similar, 119 to 104. What is greater this year are 2 items, basically, multifamily, but also new commercial. And I think that trend's going to continue. We've seen that before, where we grow residentially in over a period of time, and following behind that is the commercial development. So I'm thinking that in future years we will continue to grow in that in the commercial area. As we know, the new hotel accounts for much of that $10 million. Thank you to staff for those reports. Any other discussion on informational correspondence? Okay. Thank you. Oh, sorry, Councillor Wallace-Richmond, did you?
Just too many windows open, I apologize. The Kofi letter.
Just press your button there.
Item 15.
Yes?
So you'll notice there's many letters of congratulations to council and offers to meet with us. So I thought this was an interesting, my understanding is they're willing to come and speak to us. So it would be good to keep that on the agenda for a future. No? Not? Would it be? I guess my question of council is, would it be?
What I would suggest, Councillor Wallace-Richmond, is I think each of us has a copy of this letter, I believe, and we've received a number, so I have a list of them, and I will talk to council.
Okay.
And we may well want them to come visit us, but we could probably discuss that another time.
Okay, great. Just wanted to raise it. Thank you.
Yep, thank you. Okay, seeing there's no other discussion over informational correspondence, we will jump over presentation and delegation. We will move to council statements. Number 14. Councillor Eliason.
Not really a statement, more or less, because we haven't started our new committees or new appointments. But there is something that's I would like to make a motion and request a staff report for maybe our December meeting in regards to the new legislation for elected officials, where 1/3 of their income was non-taxable as an office expense. And I would make a motion that we request a report from our chief financial officer to how to make council whole again with the reduction of that tax, that income tax loss or benefit, however we deem. And I'd also like to, in that report, see a request for, instead of $1,000 technology reimbursement over the term, to make it two $1,000 reimbursements over the term.
Okay, can we do those one motion at a time?
Sure.
Okay, so your first motion would be a report from staff regarding the,
To make council whole with the new income tax requirements.
okay. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Lavery, thank you. Is there discussion around that motion?
We could discuss the motion at length here, but I'd rather see the report before we got into great detail on something we don't know about yet.
That makes sense to me, so I should rephrase that. Is there any discussion on the motion to ask staff for the report? Okay. Councillor Lavery, do you have a different item, or do you want to speak on that one?
It's a different item.
Okay. Councillor Flynn.
Well, I will vote in support of Councillor Lyson's motion. I thank him for bringing it forward. I know a lot of other local governments have already dealt with the issue, and I look forward to the report. I find it a little bit disappointing that that we even have to be dealing with this, but that's reality. I think the intent was a third of our compensation was designed for the travel we do in our community and the attending of meetings in our community, and therefore it was deemed to be fair to have it tax-free, and that's being changed. So I look forward to the discussion, and it'll be interesting to see how we receive it. So I will vote in support of the motion.
Okay. Any other discussion around asking for the report?
My only, it's not a raise in remuneration. It might be an increase in expense to the city, but it's about making the wage and remuneration whole from what it is in 2018 for each respective councillor or elected official at this table. So it would just be like nothing changes for us, just might cost the city more.
Thank you. Can I just ask staff, that report, would it be available at the next council meeting? Or what's our timeline for that?
I can look at that, yes.
Okay, all right. All those in favor of the motion? Okay, carried unanimously. Thank you. Your second motion, Councillor Lyson?
It's in the same vein as the first motion. It's we've moved from a 3-year term to a 4-year term, and in other jurisdictions, CSRD, the members are provided with a laptop and a telephone, and in many jurisdictions across British Columbia, that's a very similar thing. In Salmon Arm, what we came up with is $1,000 per term to go paperless in lieu of the paper to offset. But with a 4-year term, if you break your computer, you're out of luck. And so what I'm asking for is $1,000 every 2 $1,000 reimbursements to be accessed, which would be the equivalent of a low-end laptop and a telephone for the term. And so right now it's $1,000. And the request would be, because of the extended time, to be $2,000, and I would welcome it with that report or with anything else.
Okay, so you're asking for a report to outline that situation?
Part and parcel of the previous motion.
Okay, understand. So you're not actually asking for that today, you're asking for a report included in this piece?
Yes.
Okay, seconder to the motion, Councillor Lavery. Discussion around the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Thank you, we look forward to those reports. Other items under council statements?
That's all.
Councillor Lavery, thank you for your patience.
Thank you, Mayor Harrison. Who do I show up as on your screen?
Councillor Jamieson.
There you go. I'll try to channel my inner Ken. Yeah, my referee thing. I just want to speak briefly and publicly about the announcement today from BC Housing awarding the Shuswap Revelstoke Shuswap Revelstoke Canadian Mental Health Association application for housing, affordable rental housing. This is and thanks, I had asked staff to put this slide up there for our reference. I'm so appreciative, actually, of the work that's gone into this, and just to speak to that breadth of the work that's gone in. Canadian Mental Health, Dawn Dunlop and her team have put significant time, effort, and money into preparing the application. They hired a consultant to actually navigate the application process. That's how complex it is. They had to put that money up front without knowing the chances of success on that, and they've just done a great job. I want to note the support from the Housing Task Force, which really has early on adopted two tracks. One was to come back to council for a long-term strategy recommendation that we'll be dealing with in the budget process coming forward, as well as a recommendation that the way things are going to happen would be active partnerships with the stakeholders, and that's really what we do see here now. The second part of that stream from the Housing Task Force was a rapid response to be able to respond to any applications and opportunities that came forward. And this announcement today is one of that rapid response of responding to it. I want to note that the city has stepped forward. We know under the Housing Task Force, there's 4 key criteria. One is a proven housing provider. We have CMHA. One is the availability of land, and that is an ongoing discussion. One is having the data, and we've got the data together for that application, and then city support. And staff, with eventual council approval, found a significant amount of money out of our 2018 budget to support this application. So I really want to, again, thank the previous council and staff for the hard work they did on a very short, narrow timeline to support this application. I want to note that once that application went in mid-September, we're talking very narrow timelines here, then the advocacy began. And many communities were applying for this funding. This previous council was very active at EBCM, meeting with the ministers and talking with their staff. I want to give a shout out to Councillor Eliason, who was doing the provincial networking to make sure that when we actually sat down with the minister knew and understood this application thoroughly. And that was, again, we were in competition with so many other communities that are applying for this. I just, if you could turn to the, and again, we have one in the gallery, but in terms of the housing spectrum, this is from BC Housing. And I would hope that this will frame our discussions on future discussions about how we talk about the niches along the housing spectrum. The announcement today really has to do with that independent social housing that's in the middle there. It's involved market rental housing, 30%, 50% rent geared to income, where the provincial standard is you shouldn't be spending more than 30% of your monthly income on housing. In Salmon Arm, renters right now, approximately 50% of renters are paying more than 30% of their income on housing. And 20% of Salmon Arm renters are paying over 50% of their monthly income. So this announcement for 50% of the units will be that those people will not pay more than 30% of their annual monthly income, rent geared to income. They'll be subsidized from the province. And another 20% will be deep subsidies for those who cannot afford even the 30% of their income on housing. It's a huge announcement. I just want to congratulate all those at the table who have been involved at this table, the community partnership and stakeholders, and that's the way forward that we're going to go. It's about partnerships and leveraging the assets we have. If you look at the right-hand side of that diagram, in October 15th, we had BC Housing Hub coming up, talking with developers, faith-based communities about private market rentals, home ownership, entry-level options. We'll be hearing more of that down the line. Moving to the left, we haven't seen, I'll defer to Councillor Wallace Richmond, but we haven't seen much more in rental assistance in the private market. Student housing, this council has supported the application by Okanagan College for student housing coming forward. We've got the independent social housing announced today. And in both transitional supported assisted living and the emergency shelter, there are discussions that are ongoing. So there's been lots happening in a very short period of time. It's involving active partnership, and we'll be coming back to council down the line about initiatives as they come forward. So this is just a great day.
Thank you very much, Councillor Lavery, and for all your work. Councillor Flynn, is it okay if I just skip over to Councillor Wallace Richmond and then come back to you?
Yeah, it's another topic, so yeah.
Okay.
Gladly.
Councillor Wallace Richmond.
Thanks, Your Worship. Just following up on what Councillor Lavery said, I just wanted to point out too that the work continues on all the other fronts, and it's just the beginning. But it is definitely a great way to start what will be undoubtedly already a highlight of this term. So, and I look forward to seeing what happens next.
Great, thank you. Councillor Flynn, Councillor Flynn, do you want to comment or no?
No, I'll wait.
Okay, all right. Thank you. I think all of us feel thankful for Councillor Lavery and Councillor Wallace Richmond's work here as well, because it takes leaders to make things happen, and you've certainly led the way. And we've known that the City of Salmon Arm cannot do this on its own, but we can do our part, and this is an excellent example of that. So it is a very good day, and congratulations and thank you to you two and to the Housing Task Force. Councillor Flynn.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you, Councillor Eliason actually was a little bit incorrect in stating that none of us have had any of our board meetings or committee meetings yet. So I'm going to report on one I had this morning, and two I had last week related to the one this morning, but the EDS board did meet this morning, and Downtown Salmon Arm meets tomorrow morning. But I'm not going to presuppose what's going to happen tomorrow, but I will just let council know that by the end of the month, we will be seeing the MRDT approved by the EDS board, hopefully, and approved by the MRDT committee, the proposal that we have to send to the government by the end of the month, I believe, next meeting. And I want to thank in advance Erin for the work she's been doing on our behalf with the MRDT committee, EDS, and thank Councillor Lavery for all his work. That MRDT funds and the numbers that are perhaps coming from it are going to be much higher than expected, I think, as we move forward, and especially with another hotel coming online. And that revenue is being earmarked for some very significant projects over and above what we do with some organizations as a council and as a city. And I think it'll be really exciting to see what is brought forward and how many projects are being worked on. But EDS has done a great job. I'm not sure they're getting enough compensation from that revenue to do the amount of work that they've been doing, but that's a whole other discussion that has to go back to the MRDT committee and all of that. So that's been another success, and thanks to Erin and the EDS and Lana for the work they've done, because it's giving us significant revenue to improve the number of butts in beds in the off season. And I think the committee has done a good job, and I think we will start seeing significant return for the investment over time. It's not going to happen overnight, but that was most of what we talked about today, because we didn't have quorum on a Tuesday after a holiday, so I got to say I was right, Talana, because I tried to get that changed a long time ago. But looking forward to being on the EDS board with the Innovation Center and the Makerspace, and there's a new staff person if you want to stop in that's the new executive director of the Innovation Center, Thomas, I've got it written down somewhere, but just a second. Thomas Brigginshaw. And his brother moved here years ago to work for RBC, I believe, and his parents moved here, and now he's moved here from London, Ontario, and he's got some significant positive skills to move that innovation center forward. But there's really exciting stuff going on down at the innovation center too. So anyway, thank you, Councillor Lavery, for all that you've done there. You will be hard to replace, but they do sometimes mistake you and I for each other, so.
Thank you, Councillor Flynn. So we finished our business except for our delegation. I would ask, we'll take a short recess. I'd ask council to be, and staff to be back here by 10 minutes to 4, should the staff sergeant be early, and we will have his delegation at that time. So we'll recess for 25 minutes.